The White House border czar Tom Homan was recorded on an FBI surveillance tape in September 2024, accepting $50,000 in cash. Did he keep that money or give it back?
George, you've covered the story ad nauseum. Tom Homan did not take a bribe. It's a ridiculous smear. And the reason you guys are going after Tom Homan so aggressively is because he's doing the job of enforcing the law.
That's ABC News host George Stephanopoulos, looking and sounding like a ventriloquist's dummy come to life, straining to hype up a so-called mystery tape about Tom Homan as if it's the next Watergate. But his plan falls apart the moment J.D. Vance walks in, calm, composed, and utterly unshakable. What begins as a smug attempt to manufacture a scandal quickly unravels. As Vance dismantles the entire setup in real time, Stephanopoulos' effort to steer the narrative turns into a live-in-air implosion, his talking points shredded, his frustration visible. And the interview ending exactly as you'd expect, with a hasty cutoff once the storyline collapses. Welcome to NERC News, where the establishment media's mask slips and the spin meets reality. Because when facts fail, the corporate press invents new outrages to fill the void. It's almost poetic. Just as Democrats trigger a government shutdown and Americans face real struggles, ABC suddenly revives a month-old, debunked bribe rumor to change the subject. But J.D. Vance doesn't just push back, he obliterates the hypocrisy. He calls out the network for what it's become. A machine built to turn fiction into outrage. Hoping no one notices the timing, and it all begins with his calm, devastating takedown of George Stephanopoulos over the latest Letitia James indictment, a moment that leaves the media narrative in ruins.
Let me also ask you, as we saw the indictment this week of Letitia James on questions of mortgage fraud, also Lisa Cook has been accused by the Trump administration of committing mortgage fraud as well. The journalism outlet ProPublica has actually published a story, and I want to show it up on the screen right now, that says that several members of the Trump administration have faced similar questions. Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer entered into 2 primary residence mortgages in quick succession. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has primary residence mortgages in New Jersey and Washington, D.C. Lee Zeldin, the Environmental Protection Agency administrator, has 1 primary residence mortgage in Long Island and another in Washington, D.C. How do you respond to critics who say that the Trump administration is engaging in a double standard here?
Well, I'd say 2 things, George. First of all, ProPublica is basically a left-wing blog. I'm not shocked that you found a left-wing blog that can attack members of the Trump administration. But second, and this is the most important, is what does the law say? Letitia James was indicted in a left-leaning part of our country, a part that voted very heavily against Donald J. Trump for the crime of mortgage fraud. When I read the indictment, when I read the facts in the case, I see a person who committed mortgage fraud. Now, of course, the jury is going to decide whether she ultimately committed a crime. We don't try her. The administration doesn't try her. A judge tries the case, and a jury decides whether she's ultimately guilty. That is what is going to determine whether she goes to prison. I think we let the facts drive this, and George, that's what we've tried to do in the administration's Department of Justice. We've asked ourselves, has a person violated the law? And if that person has violated the law, then we decide to prosecute him. That's what the Department of Justice should do. It didn't do that under Joe Biden's administration. It does under Donald Trump's.
On the facts, do you dispute the facts that ProPublica reported?
Do I dispute a far-left blog that I haven't read that you brought up in this interview? I have no idea, George. I have no idea what they actually said. But I certainly question the source. I question their credibility. And most importantly, I'm not worried about what they said about members of our administration. I ask the question, what does the law say? And if the law says that you engage in mortgage fraud, and a local prosecutor, a local grand jury, and finally a jury convicts you of that crime, then that is how the justice system is meant to work in the United States of America.
This is what media spin looks like when it collapses in real time. Letitia James isn't some political target. She was indicted by a grand jury in one of the bluest states in America for falsifying her own mortgage documents. That's not revenge. That's accountability. The irony. George Stephanopoulos clings to a ProPublica blog post like it's holy scripture, treating partisan opinion as if it were investigative journalism. But J.D. Vance calls it exactly what it is: desperation from a side that's running out of stories to tell. Vance reminds viewers that under Trump, the DOJ enforced the law evenly, while Democrats have since weaponized it, punishing opponents and shielding their own. Yet even that's not the most embarrassing part. When Stephanopoulos tries to resurrect the long-debunked Tom Homan bribery tape, Vance dismantles it so completely that the host visibly loses his composure. It stops being a debate and turns into an autopsy of media credibility. The clip ends with Stephanopoulos walking off, not like a journalist in control, but like a man who just realized his narrative didn't survive contact with reality. What you're seeing here is the establishment media playbook laid bare. Step by step. First, take an unverified rumor, then repeat it until it feels true. Finally, demand everyone else prove it false. But J.D. Vance flips that manipulation inside out.
I think it's really preposterous. I know Tom. I think that he's a good man. He gets death threats. He gets attacked. He gets constantly threatened by people because he has the audacity to want to enforce the country's immigration laws. I think that it would be a much more interesting story about why is it that Tom Homan, who is simply enforcing Americans' immigration laws, is getting constantly harassed and threatened to the point of death threats. That's a much more interesting question that I think journalists should focus on. We can agree to disagree on that question.
Well, wait, you said he didn't take a bribe, but I'm not sure you answered the question. Are you saying that he did not accept the $50,000?
Media reports that Tom Homan accepted a bribe. There's no evidence of that. And here's, George, why fewer and fewer people watch your program and why you're losing credibility. Because you're talking for now 5 minutes with the Vice President of the United States about this story regarding Tom Homan, a story that I've read about, but I don't even know the video that you're talking about. Meanwhile, low-income women can't get food because the Democrats and Chuck Schumer have shut down the government. Right now, we're trying to figure out how to pay our troops because Chuck Schumer has shut down the government. You're focused on a bogus story. You're insinuating criminal wrongdoing against a guy who has done nothing wrong instead of focusing on the fact that our country is struggling because our government's shut down. Let's talk about the real issues, George. I think the American people would benefit much more from that than from you going down some weird left-wing rabbit hole where the facts clearly show that Tom Homan didn't engage in any criminal wrongdoing.
It's not a weird left-wing rabbit hole. I didn't insinuate anything. I asked you whether Tom Homan accepted $50,000, as was heard on an audio tape recorded by the FBI in September 2024, and you did not answer the question. Thank you for your time this morning.
No, George, I said that I don't.
Up next.
Calmly, methodically, he points out the facts. There's no indictment, no charges, no mystery tape. Multiple internal reviews have already cleared Tom Homan. The entire scandal is built on vapor, yet somehow it dominates the headlines. Why? Because truth isn't profitable. Outrage is. Vance reminds viewers that Homan's only crime was enforcing immigration law. While enduring death threats from the same activist mobs, the media now glorifies as heroes. Meanwhile, George Stephanopoulos ignores real stories, like families struggling under a Democrat-driven shutdown, choosing instead to chase a headline that doesn't even exist. In the end, Vance doesn't just win the exchange. He exposes the entire operation for what it is: theater for clicks, not journalism. It's the kind of moment that proves why independent voices matter more than ever. Because when legacy networks collapse under their own contradictions, someone has to hold the line. So, what do you think?